Om Sai Ram. A warm welcome to all my Sai devotees. Today we are going to listen the fifth chapter of Sri Sai Satcharita, the reappearance of Sri Sai. Now to continue the story from the previous chapter. Baba disappeared from Shirdi and reappeared with Chand Patil. Listen to how all this happened. How Baba created and tended the garden by himself, watering it, of the gathering of Gangagir and other saints. Listening to this narration will be sanctifying. Later on, Baba, who had disappeared for some time, how this gem of person returned to Shirdi in the Bharat of a Muslim. Before that, Devi Das has taken up residence at Shirdi and later Janki Das, the ascetic, also came there. How all this happened, I will recount in detail. Listeners, listen to it attentively and with respect. In a small village called Dhoop in the district of Aurangabad, there was a fortunate Muslim whose name was Chand Patil. While he was traveling to Aurangabad, he lost one of his mares and there was no trace of her for 2 months. He lost all hope. Patil came completely despondent and was greatly distressed by the loss of the mare. Carrying the saddle on his back, he began his return journey. Leaving Aurangabad 4.5 course behind, he came across on the way a mango tree, underneath which he saw this gem. Wearing a cap on his head and a kafni on his body, a wooden stick under his arm, crushing tobacco and preparing it for filling his chillum of a smoke, when a strange thing happened. As Chand Patil was passing by, he heard a fakir calling out to him, "Come along here, have a smoke, and then proceed further. Sit for a while in the shade." The fakir asked him what was the saddle for, and Patil answered that he had lost his mare. Then he told him, "Go and search for it near the stream." The horse was found immediately. Chand Patil was wonderstruck and thought to himself that he had met an Aulia. There is no limit to his powers. He cannot be called an ordinary being. Afterwards, Patil returned with the mare to the original place. The fakir made him sit next to him. He then picked up in his hands a pair of tongs. Then he thrust it into the soil there, took out the burning coal and put it on the chillum, which was on his hands. Then he picked up his satka. Next, there was no water around to wet the chapi for his chillum, so he bit the satka on the ground and water began to spring. The chapi was soaked in the water and then squeezed dry. He wound it around the chillum. He smoked it himself and made Patil smoke too. Patil was dazed. He made a request to the fakir and sanctified his house by the presence, and the fakir, who had manifested himself only for such divine leelas, obliged him. He went to the village the next day, stayed with Patil for some time, and then returned to Shirdi. This Chand Patil Karbhari was the headman of the village. A marriage was arranged with a girl from Shirdi for his wife's nephew. It was fortunate that the alliance with the bride from Shirdi was fixed for the nephew of Chand Bhai's wife, who had become of a marriageable age. Along with carts and horses, the marriage procession started for Shirdi. Out of love for Chand Bhai, Baba also joined in the procession. The marriage was over and the marriage party returned. Only Baba stayed behind and stayed on for good. The Shirdi became blessed. Sai, the Eternal, the Ancient One, was neither Hindu nor Muslim. He had no caste nor family, no gotra. Know him to be the self realized soul. People call him Sai. How was this name given to him? Welcome Sai. This the reverence of with which he was welcomed, and that is how his name remained. Near Khandoba temple in Mahalspati threshing ground, when Baba alighted with the marriage party on that ground, he was given this name. Originally, the threshing ground belonged to the Mahalspati. Later on, it belonged to Amin Bhai. When the marriage procession came, it was here that it halted under the banyan tree. The bullocks were unyoked at the threshing ground in the extensive open space in front of Khandoba's temple. Baba, along with the marriage guest, alighted there. When the youthful fakir got down from the cart and was first seen by Bhagat Mahalspati, he went forward to him saying, "Welcome, Sai," since he has been called by that name. Later on, from that time, everybody called him Sai, and that became his proper name. He smoked his chilim there, resided in the masjid, enjoyed the company of Devidas, and felt happy and shirdi. Sometimes he would sit in the chowdi, sometimes in Devidas' company, sometimes in the Maruti temple, absorbed completely in the self. This Devidas was already living in Shirdi before Baba came there. Later came the sage Janki Das of the Mahanubhav sect. With that, Janki Das Maharaj would sit and chat, or Janki Das would come where the Maharaj used to sit. Both were fond of each other and would meet regularly. Their neckship developed and pleased everybody greatly. Similarly, a very famous Vaishnava householder saint called Gangagir, who hailed from Pantabe, was a frequent visitor of Shirdi. Great was Gangagir's surprise in the early days when he would see Sai carrying water from the well in earthen pitchers in both his hands. When he first set eyes on Sai, Bua openly proclaimed, "It is the good fortune of Shirdi that this precious gem has associated itself with Shirdi." Although he is carrying water on his shoulders today, he is not an ordinary person. Blessed is the soil of Shirdi on which he sat his foot. Similarly, another well-known saint named Anant Nath had predicted for him that he would perform miraculous deeds. This famous Anant Nath had established a math in Yeola. He came to Shirdi once along with some of the dwellers of Shirdi. Anant Nath, who was a disciple of the great saint of Akkalkot, when he saw Sai, exclaimed, "This is indeed a diamond, a real diamond." Though today he is lying on the garbage heap that is neglected. It is not just a flint but a diamond. This were the words of Anant Nath when Baba was a youngster. Mark my words carefully. Later on, you will recall them. After prophesying thus, he returned to Yala. Those were the days of his youth when Sai did not shave his beard but grew his hair long and dressed like a wrestler. Whenever Baba would go to Rahata, he would bring saplings of the marigold and jasmine. He planted them in barren land and regularly watered them. Vaman Tatya, a devotee, regularly supplied 2 unbaked earthen pots to Baba to water the plants with his own hands. Baba would carry the water on his shoulder from the tank near the well and sunset would keep the pots at the base of the neem tree. No sooner were they kept on the ground, they would break on the spot. The early morning Tatya would bring new ones for him. An oven baked pot is more durable, but Baba required only the unbaked and new. So, without undergoing the trouble of baking, the potter would sell the pots. For 3 years, this continued, and the wilderness was transformed into the garden. This is the place on which stands the Vara today, which provides the devotees a place for close association with him. Here, under the neem tree, a devotee named Bhai installed the Padukas of Akkalkot Swami for worship by devotees. Swami Samartha of Akkalkot was the chosen deity of Bhai, who worshipped his portrait regularly with devotion. He thought of going to Akkalkot to have the darshan of the Padukas and to offer worship to them with his heart and soul. He got ready to start from Bombay the next day, but that decision remained unfulfilled and instead he left for Shirdi. One day before his departure, he saw a vision. Akkalkot Swami commanded him, "At present, Shirdi is my abode. You go there." Obeying the command with reverence, Bhai left Bombay. He lived in Shirdi for 6 months and was at peace and happy. Bhai was full of devotion, so to commemorate the vision, he installed the Swami's Padukas under the neem tree. In 1834, in the bright half of the month of Shravan, on an auspicious day, the Padukas were installed under the neem tree with the singing of bhajans and with great devotions. At the auspicious Muhurat, the installation ceremony was done by Dada Kelkar, while the rites and rituals were performed by Upasani according to the Shastras. For the future, arrangements were entrusted to the Brahmin named Dixit, who would perform the puja, and a devotee by the name Sagun looked after the management. This is the story of the Padukas. Such are the unaffected saints who are truly incarnations of God and appear on earth for the salvation and benefits of mankind. Some days later, a strange thing happened. Listeners who listen with respect will marvel about it. There was a seller of betel leaves by the name of Mohiddin Bhai. A dispute arose between him and Baba, which flared up into a wrestling bout. Both were skilled wrestlers, but destiny prevails over strength. Muhyiddin proved stronger, Baba being weaker lost. After this, he took a decision. Baba completely changed his attire. He put on a kafni and tied a loin cloth. He also wrapped a piece of cloth around his head. He used a gunny bag or sack for his seat and also as his bedding. He wore torn and worn out rags and was content with them. Sai would always say, "Poverty is better than kingship, far better than riches. The Lord is the befriender of the poor." Gangagir also passed through the same phase. He was very fond of gymnastics. Once, while he engaged in the wrestling bout, he also had a similar feeling of dispassion. At the opportune moment, he heard the words of realized person. One must realize that the body should be serving God and should wear only out in service of God. While still engaged in wrestling, he heard these words of grace. Because of them, he discarded the worldly life and sought the path of spirituality. Near Punjab, on the island in the middle of the river, stands Bua's mat, where some of his disciples also stay to serve him. Enough about him. Later on, Sai Nath only answered questions put to him and would never talk to anybody on his own. During the day, he would sit under the neem tree and sometimes under the shade of the protruding branch of the bubble tree by the side of the stream near the outskirts of the village. Sometimes he would wander about at his pleasure during the day, or in the afternoon, or in the early morning near Neemgaon, a mile or so away. The famous family of Triambak Dingle was at Jagirdari of Neemgaon. Baba Sahib Dingle from the family was dearly loved by Baba. Whenever Baba took a round of Neemgaon, he would go to his home and with great affection spend a day talking with him. He had a younger brother whose name was Nana Sahib. He had no son, so he was very dejected. There was no possibility of a child from his first wife, therefore, he married for the second time. Still, fate could not be altered. One cannot fathom destiny. Later, Baba Sahib sent him for the Sai Darshan, and with Sai's blessing, he received a prasad in the form of a son. As time went by, multitudes thronged to have the darshan of Sai. Sai's fame increased and the news was reached Ahmednagar. There Nana moved in a government circus and was influential with the officials, among whom was Chindambar Keshav, the secretary of the district collector, to whom he sent the letter saying that the great Sai is worthy of darshan and that he should have darshan bringing along with him his wife, son, and family friends. One after another, thus many people started pouring into Shirdi as Baba's fame spread, so also his circle of devotees increased. Although he was not in need of company, he was surrounded by devotees during the day, but after sunset he would retire in this dilapidated masjid. With chillum, tobacco, and a tumbler, he always kept the satka near him. He wore a kafni reaching up to his ankles and a white piece of cloth round his head. He would tie around his head a white cloth which was washed and artistically twisted behind his left ear, like a mated locks of hair. Dressed thus, he would go at times without a bath for 8 days at a stretch and walk barefooted. He only sat on the gunny back cloth. His seat was always a piece of sacking. He did not know what a bolster was. How could they be in proper bearing of grandeur? During those days, that old sack cloth was his favorite seat. It always remained there for all the 24 hours. That was the only seat and the bed. He wore a copan tied at the waist and had no other garment. Only a duni was there to ward off the cold. Baba would sit cross-legged facing south with his left arm resting on the railing in the masjid, gazing intently into the duni in front of him. Along with ego and passion, all kinds of desires were offered as oblation, and also worldly aspiration were thrown into the duni by different ways and means. In this manner, he fed a log of upright knowledge in the brightly burning fire and also repeated Allah Malik, thus keeping the banner of Lord's name flying high. And how big was that masjid? The whole place was the size of 2 rooms in which he sat, lived, slept, and received all visitors. The mattress and the cushion are the recent feature when devotees began gathering around him. In the early days, one could not go near him without fear. It was from 1912 that the change come over. The renovation of the masjid actually started since then. There were knee-deep pits in the flooring of the masjid, but because of the faith of devotees, the flooring was paved in Sahabadi stones of one night. Before moving into the masjid, Baba stayed at Takia. He stayed there long, peacefully, and untroubled by anyone. Here, tying jingle bells around his feet, he would dance gracefully and sing melodiously with devotion to the accompaniment of the tambourine. In the earlier days, the great Sai was very fond of burning oil lamps. Therefore, he himself used to go to the shopkeepers and ask for oil. Carrying a tumbler like container in his hand, he begged for oil from the shops of the grocers and oil mongers. After bringing it, he would fill the earthen oil lamps. He burned the lamps brightly in the temples and the masjid. This continued for some time. Out of love for the worship of the light, he even celebrated Deepavali with illumination. He would make twisted wicks from rags and would burn the lamp in the masjid. He brought the oil daily free of charge. Therefore, the oil mongers conspired against him to put the end to this nuisance. Later, when Baba went to ask for oil as usual, and when all refused, look what a wonder took place. Baba went back without a word and put a dry wax in the earthen lamps. What could he do without oil? The grocers watched that fun. Baba picked up a pot which was on the parapet of the masjid, in which there was a little oil, not enough even the light of evening lamp. Then he put water into the oil and Baba drank it. Thus, having offered to a Brahmin, he took pure water. Then he poured the water in the lamp and soaked the dry wicks completely, struck the matchsticks and lit up the lamps for all to see. Seeing the lamp burning with water, the grocers were dumbfounded. They felt disgusted with themselves and they had lied to Baba. Even though there was not a drip of oil, the lamps burned throughout the night. People started commenting that the shopkeepers had now lost Sai's grace. The grocers felt repentant for having harassed Baba and having committed a sin of uttering lies. They thought how great is Baba's power. Baba never thought of this. He was never angry or hated any person. He had no friends or foes, and all creatures were equal for him. So be it. We will continue with a former episode, Muhyiddin's victory in wrestling bout. Further, the life story is very interesting. Please listen attentively. 5 years after the wrestling bout, a fakir called Jawahar Ali of Ahmednagar came to reside in Radha along with his disciple. Finding an open place near the temple of Veerabhadra, the fakir camped there. This fakir was very fortunate. If he were not fortunate, how could he have acquired a delightful disciple like Sai, whose fame had already spread? There were many kinds of people in the village. Amongst them were also quite a few Marathas. Out of them was a Bhagu Sadafar who became his servitor. The fakir was a great scholar. He knew the Quran Sharif like the palm of his hand. Many selfish people, genuine devotees, and those desirous of Paramatma all alike started worshipping him. He started the construction of Eidgah. After some time, he was charged with having defiled Veerabhadra. Later on, the construction of the Eidgah was stopped. The fakir was driven out of the village. He then came to Shirdi and stayed at the masjid with Baba. The fakir was a very sweet-tongued person. The whole village started worshipping him. The way he behaved with Baba, the people said that he had hypnotized Baba and bewitched him. Be my disciple, so said the fakir. Baba, being the sporting nature, agreed to it. The fakir was pleased and took Baba along with him. He got an obedient disciple like Baba. Jawaharlal became a guru. Both of them together decided to stay on in Ravata. Guru was not aware of the accomplishments of the disciple, but the disciple knew the shortcomings of the Guru. But he never showed any disrespect and fulfilled the duties of the disciples. He did not consider the propriety and impropriety of the Guru's orders, but carried them out meticulously. He did even the menial duties for the Guru, such as carrying water, and so continued the service of the Guru. The visits of to Shirdi became occasional. When this happened, I will tell you what followed. This went on a while. He started residing in Rahata only. People thought he had left Shirdi and had completely gone under the fakir's control. People thought that Jawahar Ali had captured Sai with his own yogic powers. But Sai's attitude was different. He wanted to destroy the bodily pride. People will conjecture where was there any pride in Sai. But this behavior was for the sake of the people to set an example, and this is exactly the purpose of his avatar. There were many loving devotees of Baba in Shirdi who were greatly attached to Baba, and they thought it improper and stayed away from Baba. But Sai had completely surrendered to him, and the villagers were grieved over the situation. They began to seriously consider how to get him back. As gold and its glitter, or the lamp and its light, so it is the state of complete unity between the Guru and his disciple. The group of devotees from Shirdi went to Rahata near the Eidgah to try their utmost to convince Baba to return along with them. But Baba told them to the contrary. The fakir is very hot-tempered. Do not cross swords with him. He will never leave me. You better leave from here. He will come back any moment from the village. He will abuse you. His wrath is trouble. As soon as he returns, he will get red hot with rage. His rage is awful. Oh, you, go away immediately. Set on your way to Shirdi. Now what turn will take place? Baba had given an opposite viewpoint. Just then the fakir returned unexpectedly and asked them thus, "Have you come for the lad? What were you talking about here? You have a design to take him back to Shirdi, but don't take the trouble." Even though he spoke so in the beginning, he yielded to the pressure of the villagers and said, "Why not take me along, and will take the lad with us?" So the fakir also went along with them. He could not leave Baba, and Baba also could not apart from him. No one could understand how this happened. Sai was the incarnation of the Supreme Brahman, but Jawaharlal was fake. Devi Das tested him, and a cat was out of the bag in the Shirdi. Devi Das had a good psyche, lustrous eyes, and attractive looks. He was 10 or 11 years old when he was first came to Shirdi. At the tender age, with a loin cloth round his waist, he came as a pilgrim and stayed in the Maruti temple. Appa Bhil and Mahaspati were his regular visitors. Sai Ram and others would give him alms, thus his fame spread. 12 years before Baba came with the marriage party, Devi Das had come and settled in Shirdi. Appa Bhil was taught to write on the slate and made to learn the Venkatesh Stotra. Everybody was also made to learn it by heart. These lessons were taken regularly. Devi Das was learned Tatyaba, regarded to him as his guru. Kashinath and others became the foremost disciples and worshipped him. The fakir was brought before Devidas and a debate regarding the Shastras took place. The Bairagi won the over fakir and the fakir was driven away from there. After he escaped from there, he stayed at Vaishapur. Later, he returned after many years and bowed down to Sai Nath. The misconcept was cleared up that I am the Guru and Sai the Chela. Baba accepted him as before since he had repented and was purified. Such were the instructable ways of Baba till the time the fakir's illusion vanished. When it was destined to, Sai played up to the Sai Nath, honored the concept of the teacher and the student relationship by practicing it himself. He let him cherish his status as a teacher and accepted him his own status as a student. We should belong to somebody or somebody should belong to oneself. Anything different from this is not right. Without this, the worldly ocean cannot be crossed. This is the only lesson learned from his behavior. It is rare to find such confidence, intrepidity, and courage. One who can follow this example will attain the aim of humility. In such matters, ingenuity of intelligence are of no use. One who wants to achieve his own good should behave without pride. He who has burnt away his bodily pride in the person alone has used his body for its proper purpose. To achieve the ultimate good, he may then become anybody's follower or disciple. The young and the old were amazed to see the dispassionate state of mind in a boy so young and fair. All the people adored him and they marveled at him. The actions of the realized person happening according to the past karma, but they are not burdened to him. He does not become the actual door. Just as the sun cannot stay in the darkness, so the man of enlightenment cannot remain in the state of duality. For him, the whole universe is the incarnation of his own self. He dwells in unity. This story of Guru and his disciples' behavior was narrated by Mahalspati, a great devotee of Sai Nath. I have narrated it from beginning to end, as I heard it from him. Let us end the narration now. The next one is more profound. It will be narrated in the proper sequence. Please listen with attention. What was the earlier condition of masjid, with what the difficulties it was paved, and whether Sai was a Hindu or a Muslim? No one knows this for a certainty. In the next chapter, we will come a detailed narration in its proper order of Baba's yogic practices such as dhoti poti and Khanda Yoga, and his taking upon himself a karmic suffering of the devotees. Hemant surrenders to Sai. This narration of his life story is due to his grace only. The listening to this meritorious and holy tale will remove the ignorance. May there be well-being. This is the end of the 5th chapter, the reappearance of Sri Sai. Of Sri Sai Satcharita, written by the devotee Hemantpant, impelled by the saints and virtuous people. This is offered to Sri Sadguru Sai Nath. May there be auspiciousness. Om Sai Ram.